اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمّا. فقلت: عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أمّاه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل العصر نحو الكساء فقال: السلام عليك يا جدا يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ قال: عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة إذا بولد الحسن حسين قد أقبل قال: السلام عليك يا أمّا. فقلت: عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أمّاه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جدا، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عندك ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع والديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء فقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومى بيد اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا هرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم محب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. ما صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ قال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد وعجل. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون مهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لبي إن الله قد أوحى عليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. محمد وعلي محمد وعجل. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. وقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال بي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيتنا محبينا وفيه مهموم إلا فرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. وقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وصعدنا وكذلك شيطنا فازوا وصعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, congratulations to you all on the Wiladat night of Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, and also Wiladat al-Asghar alayhi salam, inshallah. I pray may Allah, for the sake of these gatherings, accept our praise and fast in this holy month. I'd like to request you all to please recite with me together, if you can. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، سب مل کے دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، 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 نور جب لا الہ کو پیارا ہے، نور جب لا الہ کو پیارا ہے، نور جب لا الہ کو پیارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین راہ کربلا اور حسین دونوں کا، کربلا اور حسین دونوں کا، کربلا اور حسین دونوں کا، علی اصغر بنا سہارا ہے، علی اصغر بنا سہارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام ہے، چاند آیا رباب سے کہنے، چاند آیا رباب سے کہنے، آپ کا چاند مجھ سے پیارا ہے، آپ کا چاند مجھ سے پیارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین بڑا لجپال اس کا جھولا ہے، بڑا لجپال اس کا جھولا ہے، یہ بھی مشکل کشا ہمارا ہے، یہ بھی مشکل کشا ہمارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام ہے، علی اصغر ہے وہ علی جس نے، علی اصغر ہے وہ علی جس نے مسکرا کے یزید مارا ہے، مسکرا کے یزید تمہارا ہے، علی اصغر ہے وہ علی جس نے، علی اصغر ہے وہ علی جس نے مسکرا کے یزید مارا ہے، مسکرا کے یزید مارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام فتح کرب و بلا کا یثرب میں، فتح کرب و بلا کا یثرب میں، علی اصغر ہی استخارہ ہے، علی اصغر ہی استخارہ ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام جس نے بیعت حسین سے مانگی، جس نے بیعت حسین سے مانگی، ہاتھ اصغر نے وہ اتارا ہے، ہاتھ اصغر نے وہ اتارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، ایسا فوجی ہے یہ علی اصغر، ایسا فوجی ہے یہ علی اصغر، جس کی گردن سے تیر ہارا ہے، جس کی گردن سے تیر ہارا ہے، دین اسلام کا ستارہ ہے، بر محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔ ہے یہی سب سے بڑا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا، 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 باپ کہتا ہے تجھے ابیہا زہرا، باپ کہتا ہے تجھے ابیہا زہرا، ہے یہی سب سے بڑا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا، تیرے بیٹوں کی فرشتوں نے غلامی کی ہے، تیرے بیٹوں کی فرشتوں نے غلامی کی ہے، تیرے سسرال میں اترا ہے ستارہ زہرا، تیرے سسرال میں اترا ہے ستارہ زہرا، یہی سب سے بڑا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا، کل ایمان پڑی ہے تیرے آنچل پہ نماز، کل ایمان پڑی ہے تیرے آنچل پہ نماز، کیوں نہ پھر تجھ کو کہوں کعبے کا کعبہ زہرا، کیوں نہ پھر تجھ کو کہوں کعبے کا کعبہ زہرا، ور محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
ایک دفعہ اور بآواز بلند نعرہ صلوات۔ مدحت امام عصر کی لب پر لیے ہوئے خطرہ ہے آج ظرف سمندر لیے ہوئے، میرا عریضہ جانب کوثر لیے ہوئے، میرا عریضہ جانب کوثر لیے ہوئے، موجیں چلی ہے میرا مقدر لیے ہوئے، یا علی پر محمد والے محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔ کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا، کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا، کام مشکل ہے بامداد خدا کر دوں گا، آج میں عشق کا طوفان بپا کر دوں گا، کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا، منبر عالم امکان کا خطیب اعظم بولتا تھا تو ٹھہر جاتے تھے لمحوں کے قدم، میرا اس بات پہ ایمان ہے قرآن کی قسم، لڑکھڑاتا نہ جو کم ظرف نصیری اس دم، اپنے حبداروں کو نبیوں سے بنا دیتے علی، ایک ایک شخص کو سلمان بنا دیتے علی. یا علی یا علی. وہی جبریل ہلاتے تھے یہ ایمان ہے میرا, اور اس روش پر بھی ذرا سوچئے اے اہل ولا. آ کے سدرا سے فرشتہ یہ نہیں جا سکتا, پھر یہ قرآن بھلا کس کی بدولت پہنچا. نطق اللہ کا مولا میرے بر جاتے تھے, جو علی کہتے تھے جبریل وہی لاتے تھے. کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا, اے عزادارو ہمیں پھر سے سنبھلنا ہوگا, اپنے کردار سے ماحول بدلنا ہوگا. توڑ کر وقت کی زنجیر نکلنا ہوگا, راہ سلمان پہ ایمان سے چلنا ہوگا. ہم محبوں پہ جو ظلم کا دروازہ ہے, یہ علی کو نہ سمجھنے کا ہی خمیازہ ہے. کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا. مدح حیدر میں تکلم یہ تقیہ کیسا, مصلحت کیسی انا کیسی بہانہ کیسا. وقت کے ساتھ عقیدے کو بدلنا کیسا, موت آتی ہے تو پھر موت سے خطرہ کیسا. بند یہ عشق کا دروازہ نہیں کر سکتا, میں علی پر کوئی سمجھوتا نہیں کر سکتا. یا علی کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا. صلوات.
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات. My dear elders, scholars, brothers, sisters, children, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This announcement will only last 3 minutes, or 1 minute, sorry. I just wanted to first, on behalf of the management committee, wish you all a Khushali Mubarak on the Wiladat of Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam. Salawat. And we wish all our members far and wide all the safety and happy prosperity far and wide. So just quickly, we've got 2 announcements. First one is just the COVID rules. Again, face masks on. That would be much appreciated. And then the second announcement is just a reminder of the Chalismo Majlis this coming Sunday on the 13th of February at 12:20 for our Marhum Ghulam Ali Abdul Husayn Ala Rakia. So all members are requested to attend, all the Jamaat is requested to attend, and the family would appreciate your attendance. Thank you very much. It's now time for tonight's Majlis. Tonight's Majlis is sponsored by the following Marhumeens. So can we please recite Surah Fatiha for the following marhumins, please. Thank you. Fatiha. And I was going to say, let's welcome Sheikh to the mimbar with a loud salawat. He's already on the mimbar, so salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع لذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم سبيا آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah accept your amal during these holy nights. May Allah raise your ranks, inshallah. When we examine the biography of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, there is one particular aspect of his life that is constantly highlighted, and that is the fact that he became the Imam at the age of 7. Some say 7, some say 8, but that is remarkably young, especially for a person who inherits wilaya from his father, Imam al-Rida alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, when you examine the biography of the Imam specifically, you find that from a very young age, he was challenged and he was put to the limit, or he was tested to the limits by the likes of Ma'mun al-Rashid. You see that Ma'mun al-Rashid, when he first came and interacted with Imam al-Jawad, he realized that Imam al-Jawad was not like any other person that he has met. In fact, he was remarkably close to the likes of his father, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. So what does he do? He sends a letter to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, and long story short, he forces the Imam to move towards Khurasan. Imam al-Jawad didn't have a choice, so he moves towards Khurasan. When he goes to the lands of Khurasan, Ma'mun, one of the things that even Western historians know about Ma'mun al-Rashid, and they praise him, was his love for knowledge. Ma'mun loved knowledge, and so he expanded the whole system, the educational system of his time. A lot of translation projects were taking place. The expansion of Islam was now entering the Greek world, the Roman world, and people were now coming towards the religion of Islam, and he translated many of their works. See, he loved knowledge. He was a scholar to some extent, but that's a different discussion. So when Imam Jawad alayhi salam entered Khurasan, he placed him in the spotlight and he made sure that he has public debates with the top leading scholars of the time. The famous scholar Yahya ibn Aktham, he was known as Qadi al-Qudat, the chief of all the scholars of the time. Like how we have the marja system, for example, or the top leading mufti. Yahya ibn Aktham was considered to be the marja of his time, the a'lam of his time. Ma'mun al-Rashid says to Yahya ibn Aktham, he says, look, I've brought for you Imam al-Jawad, have a public conversation with him. Have a discussion with him. He says, what are you talking about? He's a young man. He's not even been taught, he does not even have the ideas of adab, he's not even been taught adab, let alone me having a debate with him or a discussion with him on ilmi subjects. He says, Yahya, do you know which family he comes from? He says, it doesn't matter, he's a child, let him grow up for a little, just let him become a man before I engage in a discussion with him. He says, Yahya, do you know what family he comes from? He comes from Ali Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Yahya agrees, so he comes towards Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Imagine, public forum, there are hundreds of people in the courthouse of Ma'mun al-Rashid. Ma'mun wants to humiliate Imam al-Jawad, but he knows that that's not going to work. He knows that his own scholars are going to be, they're in for a surprise to say the least. They came towards Imam al-Jawad. Yahya comes towards Imam al-Jawad. He says, "Oh son, I have a question for you." He says, "What is it?" He says, "A man who is in the state of ihram, he hunts. He hunts in the state of ihram, he kills an animal. What's the hukum here?" It's a simple question that requires a simple answer. Imam al-Jawad responds, he says, "The question is incomplete." He says, "What do you mean the question is incomplete?" He says, "Yahya, think about it. If the person is in ihram, which ihram is he wearing? Is it the ihram for Hajj or Umrah? When he enters, is it within Masjid al-Haram or outside of Masjid al-Haram? When he hunts, does he know the laws of hunting or was he jahil of it? Yahya, did he kill during the night or during the day? Was it a bird or a different animal? If it was a bird, was it considered to be a large bird or a small bird? Yahya, which subsection are you in reference to?" The Imam goes into all of the different subcategories of the ruling. Yahya has asked a simple question that deserves a simple answer. But within the religion of Islam, there is no simple question and there is no simple answer. And I'm sure many of you have had fiqh questions. The Maulana sometimes goes into such intimate and intricate details, you thought you would have been better off not asking the question in the first place. But that's how deep the religion of Islam is at times. For everything, there is an intricate answer behind it. Yahya asked a simple question in need for a simple answer, but he was dumbfounded by a 7-year-old or even an 8-year-old. The Imam then, as the narration explains, the Imam then asks him, he says, Yahya, the Imam then tells him the answer. And then he says, "Yahya, I have a question for you." He says, "What is the question?" He says, a man at the time of Fajr looks at a woman. This look is haram because the woman is haram for him. In the time of Duha, which is just a few hours after Fajr, the woman becomes halal for him. In the time of Dhuhr, the woman becomes haram for him. In the time for Asr, the woman becomes haram for him. He says in the time of Maghrib, the woman becomes halal for him. In the time for Isha, the woman becomes haram for him. In the time of Muntasif al-Layl, in the middle of the night, the woman becomes halal for him. In the time of Fajr, the woman becomes haram for him. How is it possible? How is this possible? That there is an interaction between a male and a female and they go through series of halal and haram within 24 hours. Again, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam asks a question to the Grand Mufti of the time, the great Marja of the time, and the Marja was dumbfounded by such a question. And he admits defeat. Now, very interestingly, I'm not going to give you the answer, by the way. The answer is not the core subject of tonight's lecture, but it's to highlight the knowledge of the Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Now, very interestingly, if you look at the historical context behind such a debate, and this is just one of many debates that takes place. Yahya ibn Aktham comes back again, and he comes back again, and they debate back and forth on different topics. Sunni Shia debates, for example, polemics. All of these different debates are taking place on a public forum between Imam Jawad alayhi salam and the great scholars of the time. People witness the knowledge of Imam al-Jawad. When you come to the context of Imam, when you come to the whole identity of being a Shi'i who follows the Imam, the core essence of our belief is that the Imam must have knowledge. In fact, no, that's not sufficient. The Imam must be the a'lam of the time. If you have two scholars, one is an alim and the other is an a'lam, someone who has a higher level of knowledge, it necessitates that the Imam is the a'lam of the time. That is given and that is part of our faith. This is the core essence of our faith. If there is anyone who is considered to be more knowledgeable than the Imam, then they have the right to be the Imam and not the Imam themselves. Now, having said this as an introduction, you have to realize that there is a concept that is known as ulama al-abrar. Ulama al-abrar, what does it mean? It means, this is a concept within our own madhab. They say that the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt were considered to be scholars and nothing but scholars. Just like how Imam Malik ibn Anas was a scholar, Shafi'i was a scholar, Abu Hanifa was a scholar, the way Zurara was a scholar, Muhammad ibn Muslim was scholars, Likewise, the Imam was a scholar from amongst them, except that the Imam was of a higher caliber. His knowledge was far greater than the knowledge of others. Ulama al-Abrar means that the Imams were not divinely appointed by Allah. Because remember, they were just scholars, the way we have scholars today. We have scholars in fiqh, the maraja, we have scholars in philosophy, we have scholars, for example, in theology. The Imams of the Ahlul Bayt were mere scholars, nothing more, nothing less. So when you Shia come forward and you explain that the Imams have they're connected divinely with Allah, and they have the power to see or have knowledge of the unseen, they have powers to manipulate the existence as we know it, that's all exaggerations which have leaked into our madhab by the ghulat in history. Ulama al-Abrar explains that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt were nothing but scholars. Now, according to my research and my humble opinion, Ulama al-Abrar fails to explain the Imamah of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Because remember, one of the ideas behind Ulama al-Abrar is if the Imam is just a scholar, then the knowledge that he has, or that the knowledge that he has been acquired. The knowledge that he has been given to him by someone. That's the whole foundations of Ulama al-Abrar. They're scholars. If you have a scholar, there has to be a teacher behind that scholar. True or no? When you look into history, you'll find there are people, even amongst the Sunnah, the scholars of the Sunnah who testify that Imam al-Jawad, likewise all the Imams, they were unparalleled. They were unequal when it came to their knowledge. When you turn to, for example, the likes of Ibn Hajar al-Haythami. Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, he says, great scholar, he says that Ma'mun chose Imam al-Jawad to be his son-in-law, to marry his daughter, because there was no one like him in terms of worship, there was no one like him in terms of fahm and understanding, in awareness, and there was no one like him in terms of knowledge. They were at a different level altogether. When you look at, for example, the likes of Al-Jahiz, Jahiz Uthmani al-Mu'tazili, he's a very famous figure, renowned figure, especially when it comes to educational systems. They say that he was contemporaneous with Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Al-Jahiz, he had some animosity towards the Ahlul Bayt, unfortunately. In one science, he's heavily praised, but when you turn to our madhab, you find that this person had some level of anger and animosity towards the Ahlul Bayt. But he himself testifies. He says that there are 10 figures from the family of Talib, At-Talibiyin, he says. He says these personalities, there were none like them. Starting from Imam Hassan, the son of Imam Muhammad al-Hadi, the son of Ali. Imam Hassan, the son of Imam Ali, the son of Imam Muhammad, the son of Imam al-Ridha, the son of Imam Musa, the son of Imam Jaffer al-Sadiq, the son of Imam Muhammad, the son of Imam Ali, the son of Imam Husayn, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. These 10 figures, there were none equal to them in history. So even though he had animosity towards the Ahlul Bayt, you find that they accepted and they submitted to the fact that the Ahlul Bayt, there were none like him. Now coming back to the theory of Ulama al-Abrar, I believe that the theory of Ulama al-Abrar does not explain the Imamah of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, simply because the Imam attained the position of Imamah at the age of 7. How do you explain the knowledge of the Imam whilst the Imam was at the age of 7? In fact, even the closest companions of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam had the same question. Imam al-Ridha, they say that when he left the city of Medina, when he was forced to go towards Khurasan, it was a very emotional event that takes place when he says his farewells to his companions. They're crying. The Imam makes it very clear to them that I'm leaving. I'm going towards Ma'mun and I will not return. It's a very emotional moment for them. This is the last time that they will see the Imam alayhi salam. One of them asks a question. He says, well, if you're not going to return, then who's going to be the Imam after you? He says, my son, Al-Jawad alayhi salam. He says, but he's just a child. He's just been born. He's 4 years old. Imam Jawad alayhi salam was 5 years old at the time. He says, he's just a child. How can he inherit imamah from you? He says, do you doubt Allah's wisdom when Allah gave the power of intellect and speech to Nabi Isa alayhi salam? He says, likewise, do you doubt the wisdom of Allah when He gave the power of hukm to Yahya alayhi salam whilst he was just a child? Sabiyya. Sabi is someone who is below the age of baligh. He's not even baligh at the time. It's a child. It says if Allah can give hukum and Allah can give the power of judgment and the power of knowledge and wisdom to the likes of Isa and Yahya, then why not the likes of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam? Imam Rida alayhi salam moves to Khurasan. 3 years later, he's assassinated. Then Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam becomes the Imam. Now there's mass confusion in the Shi'i world. No one knows who the Imam is after Imam Rida alayhi salam. They say a group of companions, they left the city from different parts of the world. They came towards the city of Medina. They went towards the house of Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq. The house of Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq is a very famous house. They went towards the house of the Imam alayhi salam. They say one of the relatives of Imam Rida alayhi salam, either his brother, I believe it's his brother, he sat on the minbar and he announced publicly to the people, he said, I am the Imam after my brother. Ask me any question and I'll give you the answer. I am the Imam after him. Now, there's a context behind this particular event. You see, the Imam alayhi salam, wallah, they had basira. They knew that the Muslim ummah will fall into ambiguity. They won't know who the new Imam is. So what did the Imam tell his companions? The Imams told their companions, starting from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, sit down, ask me questions. Ask me as many questions as you want, as hard as they may be. Your role is to ask questions, listen to my answer, write them down and save them with you. Preserve these answers. Later on, if there is ambiguity and confusion as to who the new Imam is, ask them these questions and they will tell you the same answers. So, okay, fine. The companions, they went to the house of Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq alayhi salam, they sat down and they began to ask this person who is claiming to be an Imam the same questions that they asked Imam Jaffer, Imam Musa alayhi salam and Imam Rida alayhi salam. And the answers were completely different. In the previous years, I've talked about some of these questions and answers. The answers were completely different. Some of them even started crying. They said, well, we don't know who the Imam is. Going back to the words of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, these answers are completely different to what the person has delivered to us. We don't know who the new Imam is. As they were about to leave the house, they saw a young man. The way he carried himself was exactly the way Imam Rida alayhi salam carried himself. The same turban, the same clothing. They said, oh man, we have a few questions for you if you wish. They sat down with Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. They gave the same questions. They asked the same questions. And the Imam gave the same answers. The way his father had given. The way his grandfather had given. The way Imam Sadiq had given. They were relieved that they knew who the new Imam was. Imam Jawad alayhi salam was what age? At the age of 7. Imam Jawad alayhi salam was at the age of 7 when he delivered these answers. Wisdom, knowledge comes from the source. It comes from Rabb al-Alameen. Now there's a very interesting point that needs to be highlighted here. When you look at the theory of ulama al-abrar, it goes back to the idea that the ulama, that the imams are ulama. Which means what? Which means that every imam has the power of ijtihad. True or no? A marja has the power of ijtihad. Today we have opinions. They differ from certain things. Yes? Every marja differs, for example, in certain things. You won't find, for example, 2 marjas who agree on everything. This is the power of ijtihad. Every marja has his own opinion. You follow whom you think is most suited to be followed. Or the Ahl al-Khabra, but that's a different discussion. Every imam, if they are scholars, then they have their own power of ijtihad. If they have their own power of ijtihad, then by necessity they should differ in certain rulings, should they not? If Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is asked a question and Imam Jawad alayhi salam is asked the same question, then you would find differences in answers. True or no? Because their ijtihad is different. Time goes on, yes, technology advances, community social standards change. Then you will find differences in answers between the imams themselves. But we don't find that. We find the complete opposite. The exact same answer that is delivered by the 6th Imam is given by the 9th Imam. If you were to ask the 3rd Imam a question, the same answer will be given by the 11th Imam. Awwaluna Muhammad, akhirana Muhammad, awsatuna Muhammad. There is no difference between them at all. If their knowledge is acquired and their knowledge is based on ijtihad, then their answers wouldn't be the same. Which tells us that the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt, they were not just considered to be ulama. They were considered to be divinely linked with alim al-malakut, divinely appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why their answers were exactly the same. throughout the different generations. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When you look at the theory of ulama al-abrar, they say that the imams are ulama, merely ulama. But when you refer to the standard Shi'i doctrine, we say that the Imam alayhi salam, they did not acquire their knowledge. Rather, their knowledge was a manifestation of what? Ilm al-ladunni. Ilm al-ladunni is a manifestation of ilham. Allah communicates with His servants in different ways through wahi. Ilm al-ladunni is one of the manifestations of wahi. It's a form of ilham. What's ilham? It is when Allah inspires you with knowledge. That knowledge that is given to you, it penetrates the heart until it becomes part of you. The scholars, they give an example. They say, you know, when you're hungry, you don't need external things to tell you that you're hungry. Your body automatically tells you, your body tells you you're hungry. Your body needs nutrients. When you're happy, you don't need someone to tell you that you're happy. You don't need to sit down and justify yourself saying you're happy. You're happy. It's a feeling. You know from within that you're happy. Likewise, huzn, sadness, grief. You know from within you that you are sad. When you know that you are happy and you know that you are sad, when you have that feeling, there is no doubt in it anymore. You're 100% absolutely certain that this is the feeling that you're going through. Ilm al-ladunni, ilham works on the same level, it operates on the same level. When Allah gives you that knowledge, it's now part of you. There is no doubt in it anymore. And that's how the Imam alayhi salam used to have such answers given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When any question would be proposed to them, the Imam would have answers immediately. Where did these answers come from? Rabbil Alameen. Approach this discussion from a different perspective. If we ask the question, and it's a very simple question, if we say, for example, for hypothetically, the Imam alayhi salam acquired their knowledge, from whom did they acquire it from? You say, well, the Imam acquired it from his father. Well, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was moved to Khurasan. He lived in Khurasan for about 3 years. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam was 4 or 5 years old when he separated from his father. So it's very unlikely that Imam Rida alayhi salam sat down with him and taught him all the knowledge that would be needed later on in his dialogue or his discussions with Yahya ibn Aktham. Remember, the dialogue and the discussion with Yahya ibn Aktham is not normal. It shouldn't be undermined or understated. The dialogue with Yahya ibn Aktham highlighted the Imam of Imam al-Jawad alayhi. Where did the knowledge come from? That's the question that we're asking. Where did the knowledge of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam come from? Not from his father. In the 3 years, in the 4 or 5 years that he was there with him, the Imam was still young. 3 years, the Imam separated from his father. So, let's say, for example, it's unlikely that he developed it from his father. Perhaps it was teachers, private tuition. The Imam was the son of a crown prince. Imam al-Jawad was the son of Imam al-Rida, a very famous crown prince of the time. So maybe he had perhaps private teachers. There's nothing in history telling us that the Imams used to have teachers. They'll talk about the students of the Imam, but they'll never talk about the teachers because there were no teachers of the Imam. And I'm telling you one thing, if there was a person who taught Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he would be publicly announcing it to the world. That I taught the likes of al-Jawad. I taught the son of the crown prince. But there's nothing in history. Did the Imam acquire the knowledge himself? The Imam was young. According to the theory of ulama al-abrar, the Imam was young. How did he acquire such level, deep understanding of fiqh and knowledge from a very young age? So when you approach this discussion from a different perspective, you have to go back from a historical, educational perspective. Go back in history. In history, during the time of the Bani Umayyah and the Bani Abbas, the schooling system within the Islamic era were now starting to be developed. It flourished more so during the time of the Abbasids. Ma'mun, he establishes Bayt al-Hikmah, his love for knowledge, he establishes schools. You see, the Western historians, when they talk about the establishment of schools, they say, look, the Muslim Ummah were way forward. They were centuries forward because they established schools and universities. But there are also records showing us that they kind of manipulated the schooling system to support the politics of the time. So they say that the schooling system was established. Just like how we have the schooling system today, it existed in that time as well. They had primary schools, they had secondary schools, and they had universities. Primary schools would begin from the age of 6 onwards. When the child turns, or when the child becomes 6, He enters the primary school and he is formally taught. Basic things are taught. Things like Quran, memorization of Quran, things like poetry, things like, for example, basic Arabic grammar, sarf and nahu, and so on and so forth. Things like basic ahkam, basic theology, basic things are taught. Up to which age? Up to the age of 14. At least up to the age of 13 or 14. When the child turns the age of 6, the style and the methodology of teaching is different. The teacher instructs the child. Do and don'ts. Simple instructions are given to the child. He develops this knowledge. At the age of 14, he then enters secondary school. Some say this is in par with, and then later on he enters the university. When he enters secondary school, the style and the methodology of teaching changes altogether. The child is now taught as a young man. The teacher teaches the child how to critically think, how to be logical. The teacher teaches the child how to question, how to acquire deep knowledge. In the previous lecture, we talked about the whole power of dialogue. All of these strategies were used within the schooling systems in the secondary stage, when the child turns the age of 14. Then he begins to learn higher levels of aqaid, higher levels of theology, higher levels of fiqh. The child, if he has interest in medicine, he slowly begins to learn medicine, astrology, astronomy. If he has interest in all of these different areas, he becomes a specialist in that area. The teacher would facilitate lessons so the child flourishes in these particular areas. What's important is from the age of 0 to 6, the child is not taught a single thing. Ibn Sina, Ghazali. Ibn Sina, they say he was a Shia. Ghazali, Sunni scholar. Al-Jahiz, we mentioned him before, Sunni scholar. Ibn Sahnun, Sunni scholar. A lot of material is found from the Sunni scholars because there were plenty of them. And they weren't being oppressed. Let's speak frankly, they weren't being oppressed by the Abbasid Empire. As for the Shias, there's little material available to us. And I believe it's because they were under persecution by the Abbasids. So not much has come towards us from the Shi'i heritage. When you turn towards the Sunni works, they explain to you how a child should be developed or how a child should develop educationally. From the ages of 0 to 6, the child should not be taught anything. Ibn Sina says this very clearly. He says the responsibility of the child from 0 to 6 is to play and learn through playing. He should never be instructed. You should never sit a child down and teach him something. In our societies, the mother is working, the father is working, the child is sent to the Montessori from the age of 2, 3, 4, starts nursery at the age of 4, starts year 1 at the age of 5, and then he carries on. Our society has done it the opposite, whereas when you refer to the formative years of Islam, the classical age of Islam, the formative and the classical, the child was not taught anything from the age of 0 to 6. The child's responsibility was to learn and only learn. Today, you feel that there are some, pressures by certain parents. My child has to learn, for example, some surahs of the Holy Quran. My child needs to learn the Arabic language. He needs to learn how to read the alphabets. My child needs to learn how to read the English alphabets, for example. The child is barely 3 years old. Don't feel pressurized to teach your children at such a young age. Children are sponges. They will acquire knowledge better than you and I put together, even if they start later on in their lives. Let them be children. Let them play. Let them explore the world. A child at the age of 3 cannot keep or does not have any. Ibn Sina famously, he says the reason why a child should not be taught from the ages of 0 to 6 is because they're not mature to sit down and concentrate. That's why a child cannot concentrate for very long. They're always ecstatic. They're always erratic in their behavior. They move from one thing to another very quickly because it's their nature. After the age of 6, they're now mature, they can sit down and they can learn certain things. Imam Malik, Ibn Anas, he says, I feel sorry for the child who is forced to learn and memorize the Quran at a young age. I see this as a movement in our communities, global community. A child is barely 3-4 years old, he's been forced to memorize the Quran. He says, I feel sorry. Imam Malik is centuries ago, he says, I feel sorry for a child who is asked to memorize the Quran at a young age. You are robbing the child of his childhood. He says, don't worry. They will memorize the Quran, but later on, start later on. Let them mature intellectually. Let them develop the power of concentration, and then sit down with them and then teach them how to memorize. Coming back to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, it was not known for a child to study from before the age of 6. If you say that the Imam was just a scholar, then by definition the Imam alayhi salam should have gone to school after the age of 6. True or no? The Imam, if he had, for example, private tuition, it wasn't known amongst the community at the time that a child at the age of 4 or 3 or even 2 would start formal education. Imam al-Jawad is now delivering knowledge. No one has delivered before at the age of 7. How is that possible? The Imam did not acquire that knowledge. That knowledge was divinely inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The whole idea of ulama al-abrar fails to establish the imamah of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. And of course, when you come to our madhab, the heritage of our scholars, they explain that the Imam alayhi salam was an imam. The knowledge that he had was developed, or it was established through ilm al-ladunni, which is a form of ilham. And this is something that makes perfect sense, especially when you speak about the knowledge of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the wasila of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam, the champion of this madhab. Indeed, he was a champion of this madhab, to forgive our sins in these holy nights, to accept our a'mal as little as they may be, to forgive the sins of our marhumin insha'Allah, and to hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Let's end with a Surah Al-Fatiha for the barakah of our marhumin insha'Allah. Rahimallahu man qara'a Surah Al-Fatiha.
हो जल शिफा इलाही बराए इमाम ज़मान हमें हौज़ में शर से दे तू अमा क़यामत को मशहूर हो बाली उठे कब्र से के हम याली ए पांचवनों मिल जहाँ रहतन अहमद वाली ज़हरा व हसन शबीर से ले ताइमाम ज़मान शबीर से ले ताइमाम ज़मान एक एक पे सदा सलवात परो सलवात सलवात के उस पे निसारे हो हर जो नबी बुलंद सिफात हुए सलवात सलवात व सलाम या इमाम ज़मान फरमाओ ज़ुहूर या इमाम ज़मान सलवात السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبو الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين وأختك زينب وأم كلثوم وبنتك سكينة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم